In this session, we're going to discuss a system voltage problem. It's likely that you were sent here by tech support, or you have identified on your own that you're outside of the acceptable range that an electromagnetic clutch can accept, which is 13.2, or we really like to be 13.4 to 14 or 14.2 maximum. Like any other electrical component, clutch has to have a working range. If we're too low, the clutch doesn't have enough power, it slips, it will fail. If it's too high, the coil will overheat. So we've got to get this in check. To start this segment, we're going to discuss the components in a lawnmower engine, the system components that create that current. There's basically three parts. The first is the stator. Now, the stator resides underneath the flywheel. The flywheel has magnets that are in it, and as the flywheel turns, it creates AC current. You see these two white wires. So this is your hot and ground, and this creates an AC current. So the stator supplies that current to a part called the rectifier regulator. And many people just call that a regulator. But what the rectifier regulator does is it turns that AC current, remember AC, into DC current. It rectifies it. Then it regulates it down to that workable range that we're looking for. Most engines will be 13.5, 13.8 volts with a good battery. The third part of that system is actually the battery. The rectifier regulator has the ability to fluctuate current. So as the battery gets weak, the rectifier regulator will create higher current voltage to charge that battery. A lot of technicians will call this the charging system. And again, so there's three parts. You have the stator, rectifier regulator, let's just call it a regulator, and the battery. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is identify that we really do have a problem. So we'll take our meter and we're going to put it to DC voltage, and that's again with the ones with the straight lines, right? And we're going to find a good ground somewhere. The battery is a good choice, the block of the engine, or we can even use the side of the rectifier regulator. And that center pole, that's our DC output. That's what feeds the entire lawnmower. Everything on your mower runs off this one wire. And again, we'll check it just to be sure. Now, in the event that we do have a problem, let's move backwards. And we're going to take our meter now and turn it to AC voltage. Now we're going to check that stator. Now be very careful. This is current, so it can electrocute you. So make sure that you're very careful not to shock yourself. Now, all of these tests, the engine has to be at full throttle. So I apologize. We have to have the engine started and the throttle all the way to full. With that said, we'll hit both of these sides, being careful not to electrocute ourselves. And we should see between 26 and 30 volts AC. Now, different lawnmowers, different engines will produce a different value here. So you likely will have to take your engine model and spec and serial number to identify what it really should be. But for the most part, it's going to be between that 26 and 30. And obviously, if the stator is bad, you're going to see nothing here. Or you'll see a real low number. Common failure, the flywheel will drop one of its magnets. They're kind of glued into or epoxied into the flywheel, and it'll damage some of the windings, or it'll drop off and destroy it. So you'll see failure mode wise, you'll see kind of one of two things. You'll see a real low voltage here, or you'll see nothing. So we're looking to see if our stator's good. If we've identified that the stator's good, we're off to the next step, and that's to check the rectifier regulator. And again, that's that first test where we're checking that center pole. Now, if we come in at, say, 14.5 or 14.7, where it's not crazy off, it's likely that we have a problem with the third component. Remember we said 3 components: stator, rectifier, regulator, battery. So now we're going to look at that battery. If your battery is real low, the machine's been sitting, or it's an old battery, this could be creating more current to try to charge that battery. So what we like to say is to recommend is to pull the battery, take it to your local auto parts store, have them load test it, or if you have a load tester, do it yourself, and make sure we've got a good battery, charge it up good if it's low, and then check again. If we do all of those things, new battery or good well-charged battery, we know the battery's good and we're still high, then we're going to look to the ground. You could have a corroded ground somewhere in the system, or a loose ground, or a connection that's corroded and or loose, those sorts of things. What we suggest is to take every connection on the mower and just start unplugging and cleaning. Put a little dielectric, which is the stuff that we put, that kind of greasy stuff we put on all of our clutches. Put some dielectric on there just to make sure all of those connections are good, solid, and that we don't have a corrosion issue, because what happens basically is that it's sending current out, and if there's corrosion and the current can't flow very well, this is tricked, if you will. It's thinking that it needs to charge the battery, but when in fact we just have a corroded connection. So those are the basic overview of the system and what can go wrong. So it's really one of 3 things. You have a bad stator, we have a bad rectifier regulator, or we have a bad battery, or a combination of all 3 or 2. It's often that common rather that when the stator goes bad, that it'll short out and destroy the rectifier regulator. Or if you've got something bad, one of these 2 bad in the system, that it damages the battery. The battery's trying to run the lawnmower and the clutch and all these sorts of things. And so it's damaging to the battery. Well, hopefully this session's helped you. We've got to make sure that that voltage gets between 13.4 and 14 volts, ideally. And if you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call. Thank you.